Mounting a motor. We're mounting the spur gear drive. We're going to mount the variable speed motor this time instead of the fixed mount. It's going to require gear motor risers, which are a little higher. These are a little taller than what you're used to with the fixed speed motor. This will bring us off the table a little bit more, so it gets closer to the shaft. The hardware used, 5/16 bolts by 2.5 inches, and usual flat washers, lock washers, and nuts. In mounting this, the 4 risers go over the 4 slots here. Put the motor down so the shaft sticks out towards where the load is going to be, and just simply drop the hardware in. This is as far as where the text takes us. What we should do with this afterwards is, of course, check for run out, end float, and level. Now the level rule is going to be the same as for the fixed speed motor. I'll caution you on the back part here. Put the flat washer down first, then drop the bolt inside. A lot easier to do it that way. And of course, from underneath the table, we'll put in the various pieces of hardware. Not mentioned in your book is a check for soft foot. Easy way to test for soft foot. I would hand tighten these 4 bolts. Kind of snug, but not exactly real tight. You can see how this is pullable and actually go to the opposite corner, and it can move, whereas this is pretty tight and this is pretty tight. That indicates a soft foot condition when it's in diagonal corners, so that this is the high end, or so-called long end and short ends. So do we need to correct for this? Ordinarily, pull out a feeler gauge. Usually it's not a whole lot of soft foot, but it will be some. And should be able to, say, insert a feeler and keep from moving, so that this doesn't really move. In this case, it's a .003. So we're going to attempt to put a .003 shim in here and see if we can still move our discs. After careful working out, we determined that it was about 1/1000th of an inch here, so we put as a 5 here and 2 3s here to give us an extra 1/1000th of an inch. The next step is to level the motor shaft. Not quite required, but makes the job a lot easier in hooking up to the shaft later on. Over at the bubble, I can see it's high at this end. The bubble shifted over to the left, my left, your right. So what I need to do is to slightly raise this back part. And of course here my shim ratio is going to be this distance, which I measure to be 3 inches, divided by this distance, which I measure to be about 1.25 inches. So when I put my feeler gauge bubble and can just slide in the leaf reads 0.0015. I multiply it times my shim ratio of 3 divided by 1.25 to get a shim ratio of 2.4. 3 divided by 1.25 is 2.4, times my leaf of 0.001, which will give me about a 3 mil shim to put under both this and this bolt. These 2 bolts, because I have to raise the back end. To raise the back end, I need to put it under these 2 bolts. So I'll go ahead and do that now, and then I'll have a leveled motor, soft foot, level motor. The next will be check the end float, and of course run out. Run out really can't be done with a gear motor because it doesn't really turn readily. We can certainly check still end float, although that doesn't. In this particular motor, we don't have much end float either. Do that as the same as we did in lap 2 for the fixed motor mount. At this point, I would hand tighten these bolts. I put the 3 mil shims here and here. I would hand tighten the bolts, but unlike the text, I would not tighten them down with a wrench yet. Reason being is that ultimately we're going to move this motor to align with the shaft on the load. Our next step here is to mount up our load system.